Viewers continuously keep asking me what a beginner 3D printer in the range between $200 and $300 is that I can recommend. So I finally compared two interesting contestants, the well-known Ender-3 Pro and the Alfawise U30 Pro, which is the same printer as the LONGER LK4 Pro. I extensively tested them side by side and even used them for many hours in the production of face shields. How do they compare and which one of them is the better choice if you want to get into 3D printing or if you just want to buy yourself a reasonably priced second machine? Let's find out more. Guten Tag everybody, I'm Stefan and welcome to CNC Kitchen. Don't judge me that I'm a little late to the game, especially with the Ender-3. I just didn't have luck with newly released printers in the past. Having troubles with 3D printers right out of the box, especially if you're new, can be really frustrating. So I chose two printers that have been on the market for a while and shouldn't have these first batch problems anymore. The Ender-3 is probably the printer most talked about and probably also the most sold in 2019. I chose the Alfawise U30 Pro as a second contestant in that comparison because the price is similar. But it seems to offer quite some features that the Ender-3 Pro doesn't have, but also lacks some. But how will they really compare in the end? If you have experience with those or other 3D printers that you deem suitable for beginners with a low budget, leave your thoughts down in the comments. Just to be fully transparent, both printers were provided by GearBest, free of charge. Everything you hear in this review are my own thoughts. So let's dive right in. The Ender-3 Pro is usually available in the lower $200 range, often even purchasable from local vendors where you save on shipping time and import taxes. The Alfawise U30 Pro, which is just a rebrand of the LONGER LK4 Pro, usually costs a little bit more than the Ender, but is still well below $300. Prices and inventory fluctuate a lot, especially right now, so check the different sources to get the best deal. I've linked a couple of vendors down in the description for you to compare prices. Both machines come nicely packed as a kit, with lots of foam padding. Assembly is quite simple and mostly well described in the multi-language color manuals. The boxes contain all the tools that you need to assemble and operate the printer. The kits take around an hour to build, in which you assemble the gantry, build the bed and plug in a couple of wires that are nicely marked with sleeves. There is no fiddling around with mains voltage necessary, so you don't have to be afraid of getting shocked. The Ender-3 Pro guide was a little more straightforward, especially with naming the sizes of the screws, though I had some issues when putting the power supply into place and it's still a little close to the bed, what you can see from the wear marks. Assembled, the Ender-3 Pro uses around 45 by 51 centimeters of desk space. The Alfawise requires a little bit more in the side due to its stiff tubing and occupies 45 by 56 centimeters. Before we power them on, let's take a look at the features and appearance. Both do look quite similar, and you can't omit that the U30 is a close copy of the Ender-3 besides some changes. Both are built up from 20 by 20 and 20 by 40 aluminum extrusions, and the linear motion is handled via V-slots and plastic rollers. The X and Y axis are belt driven, and the Z axis, that can reach 250 mm, is actuated by a single lead screw, which works fine at that size. Unfortunately, there is no mechanism to tighten the belts installed, and the only way you can apply proper tension is quite fiddly. Both beds are leveled using 4 nuts below the carrier. Unfortunately, the smaller ones of the Alfawise make the adjustment more fiddly. The beds are obviously heated and can reach temperatures up to a good 100 degrees Celsius. The beds that are 220 by 220 mm in size feature a sheet of fake build tech, which makes 3D prints adhere to it very nicely, even at temperatures far below what you'd usually use. PLA can easily be printed at 40 degrees Celsius, saving energy. The problem is that parts stick so well to it that it's often difficult to remove them after printing. The Ender-3 Pro tackles that with its flexible and magnetic print bed that makes the removal process way easier and is one of the outstanding features of that printer. The Alfawise U30 Pro has the plastic adhesion sheet applied to a piece of glass, which makes removing the prints really hard from time to time. At some point I even started to turn it around and directly print on the glass, on which I applied a Printer Pro's printer fix. An upgrade to a flexible print bed is something that I'd seriously consider with the U30 Pro. Both beds were quite flat and varied only around 0.1mm in height, which is excellent for good first layer adhesion. They also seem to keep their level quite well over the couple of hundred hours I used them, and I rarely had to readjust the nuts. The Alfawise is more critical in that regard, because you sometimes add quite a lot of force when you remove prints. Both machines have a very similar extrusion system with a feeder located on the left side of the x-axis and a Bowden tube that guides the material into the hot end. A single knurled gear pushes the material, the other side is only a ball bearing idler. The material sits on the top of the printer on a spool holder, which makes the machines more compact, but also results in the filament rubbing and potentially chewing through a part of the feeder. The Ender-3 tackles that with a metal insert, whereas the U30 has nothing in that place. If you don't put the spool on an external holder or adjust the filament path yourself, this will, at some point, destroy the tensioning arm. The PTFE tube reaches all the way down to the nozzle in the hot ends, which limits the maximum temperatures to 250 degrees Celsius, but still gives you the possibility to not only print PLA, but also higher demanding materials like PETG and ABS are possible. I even printed Polymaker's Polymax PC on the Ender. The only problem here is the print surface that can stick too well to those materials and get damaged during the removal. Both hot end designs are not ideal, and I had issues with them during the tests, but I'll get to that later. The Ender-3 Pro uses a small radial fan to cool the part. The Alfawise an axial fan with a nozzle that I slightly had to bend into place, that the flow of air nicely reaches the nozzle. They're not too loud, and even though it's not a perfect cooling solution, prints to look really well, which I'll show you in a second. One of the noticeable, biggest differences between the two printers are their screens. The Ender-3 Pro uses one of the well-known monochrome screens with an encoder wheel to navigate through the menus and adjust settings. The U30 Pro, on the other hand, features a really nice and responsive, full-color touchscreen that leaves almost no wishes open. The only thing I'm missing was baby stepping to adjust the first layer height interactively. Both machines use an 8-bit control board that runs Marlin, but not always in its newest release. Source codes and firmware updates are available on the manufacturer's homepage, though for the Alfawise I had to go to the Longer 3D website for the download. The main way in which the control boards differ are the stepper motor drivers. The Ender-3 Pro uses generic, non-quiet drivers that make the familiar sound during printing and are soldered directly to the board. If you want to make it quieter, there is a silent upgrade board available directly from Creality. The Alfawise shines in that regard and uses removable TMC2208 silent stepper motor drivers for the X, Y and Z axis, which eliminates most printing noise if there wouldn't be the cooling fan for the electronics, but more on that in a bit. The extruder still uses a generic driver and can therefore be heard during, for example, retractions. The G-code is loaded on both machines using the provided microSD cards. The Ender-3 has a slot in the front, the Alfawise, unfortunately, harder reachable on its side. Both printers run on 24 volts, the Alfawise uses a generic, the Ender a name brand Meanwell power supply that is temperature controlled. Wiring is definitely nicer done on the Ender, not only in the electronics box, but also with flexible sleeves and a strain relief at the heated bed. The harder tubing of the Alfawise can be annoying from time to time, and a real no-go is that there is no strain relief at the bed, so the pretty stiff wires are only held in place by the solder joints. Speaking of silent stepper motor drivers, let's talk a little bit about smart features. The only smart feature that the Ender-3 Pro has is power loss recovery, which means that if you lose power for a bit, the printer will resume the print at the layer it stopped before. The Alfawise U30 Pro does not only have power loss recovery, it also features a filament runout sensor that pauses the print when you run out of filament and allow you to change the material and resume the process. Even though both don't have a bed leveling probe, at least the U30 Pro has a wizard integrated that helps you to quickly move the nozzle to the leveling locations. The Ender-3 Pro requires you to do that manually. Since the bed level is quite stable, I personally don't miss a sensor here. Now let's take a look at the most important thing for many, and that is the print quality. Oh, and if you're new to the channel and interested in 3D printing and engineering, make sure to subscribe and select the notification bell. I used Cura 4.5 for slicing and loaded the default Ender-3 profile with some minor changes. Since the machines are so similar, I used the same G-code always for both of them, which lets us compare the results quite nicely. All parts were printed in ESAN PLA+. The parts on the Ender used blue filament, for the Alfawise I used red. As expected, print results are very similar, and I mean that in a good way. Both machines were able to reproduce details of the test models very well. There are some minor differences in the overhangs where the cooling solution of the Ender-3 Pro seems to perform better, and the U30 Pro sometimes shows blobs on the surface that is a result of too small print moves. I discussed the solution to that in a previous video that I link below. There's no C-bending visible on either, and these vases look stunning. Here and on some other smoothly curved surfaces is, unfortunately, where the Ender-3 Pro shows one of its weaknesses due to the use of the older stepper motor drivers. The parts show a salmon skin effect, which makes small steps on the surface visible. From time to time there are also some layer inconsistencies visible, but in my opinion, totally acceptable at that price point. Overall, the print quality is excellent, besides small problems with blobs at the U30 and the salmon skin effect on the Ender-3. Dimensions were a little bit better at the U30 Pro, but that's depending on the material and calibration, so I can't say which one is really better. Let's quickly talk about safety. Even though they're kit printers, they don't require you to wire mains voltage or work next to it. The Ender-3 Pro is still a bit nicer in that regard, since the power supply is nicely enclosed, whereas if you take a look at the electronics of the U30 Pro, you come quite close to the connection terminals. I tested thermal runaway protection on both machines and it was gladly activated. Next, let's take a look, or better listen, how loud both machines are, sitting idle and during printing. The Ender-3 Pro is hardly noticeable when not printing. The power supply fan is temperature controlled, and hot end as well as the electronics cooling fan are pleasantly quiet with a level of 48 decibels. During printing it's a bit different because the stepper motors with the older drivers are really annoying to listen to. During printing we are around 58 decibels, but we get quite a bit louder during fast travel moves with peaks of around 70 decibels. The Alfawise is a bit different in that regard, because the electronics cooling fan is already really loud and annoying at idle with around 56 decibels. If you start printing, it doesn't get significantly louder with the quiet stepper motor drivers and the part cooling fan. The noise level is only increased from 56 to 58 decibels. So I would not like to have any of them next to me at my desk, but I'm a little sensitive in that regard. The Ender because of the annoying printing noise, the U30 Pro because of the horrible electronics cooling fan, though a swap of it might already make it a way more pleasant printer. So I'm not a huge fan of modding my printer to the point that I could have bought something better working in the first place. Still, this might be something very important for many. And in that regard, the Ender-3 Pro is definitely better. Due to its popularity, it has a huge community, and there are by far more printable upgrades or even purchasable ones available. This goes as far as that there is even an upgrade to a Core XY available, which costs more than the printer itself. Since you can't often expect the best support by Chinese printer manufacturers, a big community is a big plus to help you out. The Alfawise U30 Pro or the LONGER LK4 Pro are not as popular and therefore don't have such a big community and upgrades available. So if you're really new to 3D printing, the Ender might be a better choice due to the community support. Though this doesn't mean that you won't get any for the Alfawise, only not as much. Printing a handful of models is fun and shows how nice the machine can print, but don't tell us how they fare over a more extended period. As I've said in the beginning, I've been using both of them for printing face shields, and though they worked quite reliably, there was one problem they both suffered from. It is a known problem of the Ender-3 that over time the Bowden tube that reaches down into the nozzle can slightly move upwards, creating a gap between the tube and the nozzle and jamming it up. It first happened on the Ender-3, and just a day later I had exactly the same problem with the Alfawise. I took the hot ends apart, cleaned the nozzles, cut the ends of the Bowden tubes and put everything in place again. The Alfawise has a totally stupid design here, because the tube doesn't reach all the way down to the nozzle, but is stopped by a metal step in the heat break, which creates two imperfections in the filament path. Here I just drilled the tube out so that the PTFE again reaches down to the nozzle. That worked for a couple of days of continuous printing, but then I had the same issue again. I'd either suggest getting better pneumatic couplers here, or better even hydraulic ones. What I will try out on both is Chuck Hellebuck's fix, which decouples the feeding tube and the tube in the hot end. Otherwise, besides some wear at the extruder arm, both printers did really work well. I said both quite a lot in this video. This is because the two printers are pretty similar in many aspects and do work equally reliable or unreliable. The Ender-3 Pro shines due to its removable bed, some higher quality components and the huge community there is. The Alfawise definitely has more state-of-the-art components with the color touchscreen and the trinamic drivers, but has a fixed bed with some wiring issues and a smaller community. Would I advise you against buying any of these printers? No, I think they are capable machines if you don't expect the quality and reliability of higher priced printers. Personally, I'd recommend the Ender-3 Pro for bloody beginners, whereas the Alfawise U30 Pro more for people that find joy in a bit of tinkering and modification. If you want to get one of them, regularly check prices and availability, because that can change a lot and might also be the reason to buy one or the other. A couple of links are in the description. So now, what do you think? Do you consider buying one of those or even own one? What's your experience, and would you rather recommend another 3D printer for beginners with a small budget? Leave your comments down below.
Thanks for watching everyone. I hope you're all doing well. If you found this video helpful, then leave a like, share it with the community and make sure that you're subscribed for more. If you want to support my work, head over to Patreon, become a YouTube member or use the affiliate links in the description. Go check out my other videos if you currently have more time than usual and want to educate yourself. Stay healthy, auf Wiedersehen, and I hope to see you in the next one.